E0OG, and this is a presentation that I gave last night at the Montrose Amateur Radio Club, which meets in Olathe, Colorado. The subject is logging and QSLing for the radio amateur in the electronic age. The topics we're going to cover range all the way from formally defining what a QSO is, because that's at the basis of everything, different ways of logging, what QSL cards are, what they're for, a little bit about eQSL versus Logbook of the World, not too much because this particular presentation focuses on Logbook of the World. And then we'll look first at how it works, and we'll show some examples, and then we'll end up with how to sign up for Logbook of the World. So the question becomes, what is a QSO? Well, a QSO, of course, is a Q signal, and it stands for being in conversation with somebody, and the term in amateur radio has come to mean a contact, a conversation of some sort between two hams. Now, on FM voice, that can be very casual, just an exchange of call signs, some talking, and that's it. That's all you really need to worry about. But for a loggable QSO on HF, it is considered that there are some minimum elements that must be present in order for there to be an official QSO. The first is exchange of call signs, including any extra little things like G3, PSK, underscore, W6. All of this extra needs to go into there too. An exchange of locations, usually a geographic location, but these days it's become more common to just use the grid square. For example, these are locations I might give for where I am now. I might say I am in Ridgway, Colorado. I might say I'm just in Colorado, or I might say if I'm talking to a DX station, I'm in the United States. Or I could give my 4-element grid square, DM68, or my 6-element DM68CG. Then the other thing that's usually exchanged is an exchange of signal reports. RST or RS, that stands for readability, signal strength, and tone quality. RST is used on CW, RS usually for phone. There are other methods of indicating signal strength, such as on JT65 contacts, where it's a number in dB. Now, the key thing to remember is if we do not exchange these things, it doesn't count as a formal QSO. So you have a QSO with somebody, he never tells you where he is, or exchanging signal reports. It's a fun on-the-air conversation, but it's not generally considered to be a loggable QSO. Now, one exception to this that I must point out is that there are contests, on-the-air contests, and they sometimes mandate other exchanges. For example, in field day, you would give your ARRL section instead of a signal report. So it's usually 3 elements of some kind. It could be a contact, serial number, name, whatever it might be that meet the requirements of the contest. Now, the point of this is if you have this QSO, you want to put it in a log. A log, of course, is a record of some kind of things as they happen. It's usually recorded as things happen. That's why it's called a log. Logging is now optional. 'Twas not always thus. When I first got my amateur radio license, logging was a requirement. Now it is not. You can choose which QSOs to log. I generally do not log QSOs on FM voice on VHF. I do usually log QSOs on HF. Now, why do it? Well, it's a list. It's your own record. It's you. It is your history. And you can go back years later and look at your log and recall with pleasure some particularly interesting events. Sometimes there are event-specific logs that are submitted for contests, and these can have their own format, for example, field day logs. Usually these days, people who run contests would like you to submit their logs in electronic formats. Now, this is important. When doing contests and stuff like that, just submitting the log is enough. That's your word as to what context took place. Now, in terms of awards, things like that, people want more than just your word for it. And this brings us into QSLing. Now, QSLing is a confirmation. That's what QSL means. I confirm. It's a confirmation of the contact. And we'll show a little bit more about it. QSLs are used extensively on HF. Also for specialized VHF and UHF modes that are not FM, like sideband context, CW, Earth, Moon, Meteor, and so on, are all kind of special contacts and are logged. What are the elements of a good log? Again, you've got many options for keeping your logs. The essential information, of course, beyond your own call sign, is the call sign of the station worked, the UTC date and time. Note this is radio time, which sometimes called GMT, sometimes called Zulu. It's standard time in London, and since radio operators the world around use that as the time for their logs, then everybody's talking the same thing. Of course, the frequency or band, your signal reports, the mode. You can add additional information of any kind that you want. Your power out, the rig you used, the antenna you used. You can also put into your log, these aren't contacts of course, but information about station modifications, additions, and so on. The other station's location, your location, whatever you want to record about the other operators, such as name, occupation, and whether or not you've exchanged QSL cards. Now, there are many different logbook types. You can buy pre-formatted logbooks from the ARRL. You can use your own paper notebooks, whatever you want. You can use a local electronic logging software. By local, I mean on your computer, like Ham Radio Deluxe. There's specialized contesting software and so on that create logs. You can also use an online logbook like eQSL and Logbook of the World. I use the paper and Ham Radio Deluxe. Now, here's an example of the old ARRL formatted logbook. You can still get these and buy them. They have all the essential elements that you would want to put in there, but not very much room for information about the QSO. Here's an interesting one here. My inverted V on the rooftop was destroyed by lightning. That certainly was a critical station modification, so I made note of it in my logbook. You can also do a less formal paper logbook like I do. This is just in a spiral-bound notebook. I have a little rubber stamp that I had made that has the critical elements that go in there to make sure I don't forget to record them. Put the UTC date here and whether or not I've sent and received QSLs. And then I can just record anything that I want that the other person talked about or that I wanted to record. Note here I was using a particular QRP rig and a particular antenna, and my power output was 5 watts. The electronic logbook will record all of the same things, plus has more information for notes. One of the nice things about the electronic logbook is that it will directly coordinate with the online logging system, both eQSL and Logbook of the World. Now, having talked about logging, let's talk about QSL cards. For contests and stuff, it's enough to submit your log, and that's all that they need to determine awards and so on. But QSL cards were confirmed very early on in amateur radio. In fact, and here's an old 1972 book, a QSL is the final courtesy of the QSO. The QSO, of course, being the contact, the QSL being the confirmation. So the QSL card confirms that the contact took place. Most operating awards require not just your log, they require the QSL card received from the other station. Some examples for these are Worked All States and the DX Century Club Awards, and a bunch of non-ARRL awards require these also. The reason is it's not only your indication that you have worked the station, but you have some proof from the other station that they agree that you worked that station. A typical QSL card might look like this. We see the call sign, the county. There are county hunting awards, the DXCC entity, the grid square, member of the ARRL, the actual physical address. This particular fellow is very proud of being part of the CW club called Fists, and it's got a number for that also. Also, he's very proud of being in the state of Texas, so he's got the state logo for that. And then the key elements that are in here, note that this confirms that there is two-way contact. In this case, he is sending a QSL card to me. He has not received one from me, so he's saying, please do send me a QSL card. If he had already received mine, he would have put thanks right there. I want you to note right down there, QSLworks.com, that's the printer that printed them. And if you find a QSL card that you particularly like, and you can find who printed it, you can have some printed up for you. The essential elements are the ones we just discussed. Note, particularly here, mode. If there's something special about the station you work, like W1AW/8, that needs to go in your log also. And as I mentioned, several printers provide QSL cards. You can get these from QSL cards you've received. Also, QST at the back in the classified ads has a section for QSL card printers. The format of a QSL can be pre-printed. An annotated postcard, just an old postcard with the essential information written on it, will do just fine. Even a letter, a hard copy paper letter. Some special event stations will send you a hard copy paper certificate. There are electronic ways of QSLing. There's some what I will call the less formal, like eQSL, and then some the very formal, like Logbook of the World. I'm going to spend most of my time on Logbook of the World. But let's talk first about paper QSLs, sending and receiving paper QSLs. Direct mail works. It's much less popular now because the penny post is a thing of the past. Postage for a card, as of making this particular presentation, 38 cents per card, or 49 cents if you want to send a letter. So it gets a little expensive if you do a lot of it. Some people send them as postcards. For example, I do. Others use envelopes. Now, when we talk about QSLing with people overseas in other countries, direct mail can become problematic. You can send a card to somebody, no problem. It's expensive. It's over $1 to send a card to somebody overseas. And some operators, if you want their confirmation, ask you to send them what they call a green stamp, which is a $1 bill or $2 to pay for the reply postage. In some countries, note that it's illegal to possess foreign currency. So if you send a couple dollars to somebody in one of those countries, you can get them in trouble. So it pays when you do your DXing to know which countries to send that to and which not to. The other method, safer, is the Bureau. Been set up for many decades. Your overseas QSL cards, by overseas I mean a country outside the U.S., in batches to the ARRL Bureau. You need to be a member of the ARRL to do this. And then there's an incoming QSL Bureau. There's one for each call district from 1 through 9 and then 0. You send your self-addressed stamped envelopes to them, and when they get enough cards, they'll send some to you. The advantage of this is it's very inexpensive. The disadvantage is that it can take years. I've had QSL's cards come to me that were for QSOs 5 and more years prior. Now, electronic QSLs, let's talk about them. We do live in the electronic age after all. Email is not accepted by anyone for award credit, so just scratch that. The easier systems such as eQSL are not accepted by the ARRL for award credit because of security concerns. However, it is very popular, and frankly, I get more acknowledged QSLs on eQSL than I do on Logbook of the World, probably because Logbook of the World is a little difficult to set up, as you'll see in a minute. Once Logbook of the World is set up, it will match incoming QSLs with the QSOs that you've submitted. Now, note, unlike paper cards, unlike eQSL, The Logbook of the World will not show you an incoming QSL if you do not already have a matching QSO on file. Okay, very important. So let's just a quick comparison of eQSL and Logbook of the World. First of all, they are both web applications. All right, eQSL is an online thing. Logbook of the World is an online thing. You don't have either of them as local applications. Logbook of the World is not something you run on your computer. To get an eQSL, all you need is your web browser. You sign up for it, you get a password, and then you can go from there. Your logging software will, in all likelihood, interface with eQSL. Now, Logbook of the World is more formal. The piece of software that you must have locally is called TQSL for Trusted QSL. This is on the PC, this is on the web. Now, you will have associated with your TQSL software a digital file that's called a certificate. This is not like a certificate you put up on the wall. This is a digital thing. It's an IT thing. It's a piece of code, a file that only you have. So when you use that to sign logs going up to Logbook of the World knows that it's you and no one else because only you possess that certificate. You can view what you have in your web browser, and your logging software can get TQSL to sign logs, which can then be submitted to Logbook of the World. The key difference between the two is the certificate. So now more about Logbook of the World, and that's all I'm going to talk about from here on out. Let's talk about Logbook of the World, and at the very end I'll show you specifically step-by-step how to sign up for it. Logbook of the World is free. ARRL membership is not required, and it can be used by hams worldwide. Confirmed QSOs can be submitted for credit to awards directly. Now, it's still possible to get awards with some Logbook of the World QSLs and some paper QSLs, but it's cumbersome. And for the next couple decades, we're going to be in a transition between paper and electronic. It's just the way it is. Here is the URL you want to go to get started, www.arrl.org/logbook-of-the-world. All right, that will take you to this page, which has all kinds of stuff about getting signed up for Logbook of the World and how to use it. Getting started here, applying for award credit, and so on. Now, let me show you how it's used, and then I will show you how to sign up for it. Here's how it's used. You can log in by going to LOTW.ARRL.org, which will switch you over to this more complex URL. You put in the username, KE0OG in my case, and you put in a password. This is not your ARRL password. This is a special password that only you have, and you will use this not only for logging into the website for Logbook of the World, but also is used to sign all of the certificated QSO collections, logs if you will, that go up to Logbook of the World. I will show you later where you get this password. Once you log in, here's your landing page. What's of interest, of course, are your QSOs and your awards. Now, Logbook of the World is a database, and as a database, it can be queried. The word query means to ask a question of the database. Here's a form you can fill in. You can look for a specific call. You can look for confirmations between certain starting and ending dates, modes, whatever, DSCC entities, and so on. There are two common queries that are available here for you, your most recent QSLs, your most recent QSOs. I'm going to look at that latter one first. Here are a bunch of QSOs that I have updated that were sent up to Logbook of the World. Again, you must put a QSO up there before it can be confirmed. They will not send you the confirmation before you've put it up there. So this column right here, the QSL column, indicates if there is something in this column, it is confirmed. There is nothing in this column that has not been confirmed. Let's take a look. Example, here is the Spain. I had a conversation using PSK63 with this station in Spain on this date and time, and that person also sent in their logbook that had that in it. The Logbook of the World made a match, and this is a confirmed QSL. So on this page I have Japan, Canada, and Spain confirmed. Now we can also look just for QSLs recently received. So obviously every one of these is confirmed. And you can check through, for example, I've got Namibia. That's in Africa. I got that confirmed. Croatia in Eastern Europe. Chile and down in South America. Australia, the Ukraine, and so on. All of these have been confirmed. Now you can upload your log. There's 3 ways of doing it. First, if you have a Cabrillo formatted file, I think there's another file they accept also, and then you sign it using TQSL, which will append your certificate, okay? Then you can upload it. That is truly the most cumbersome way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to create a log in TQSL. Now these I would call log snippets, because you can put in there QSLs or QSLs. You can put several of them in there, because after you put in one, you can add more. And then when you're done with that, you will then use your certificate and your password to sign it, and it will upload it to Logbook of the World. Okay? Now, another way that you can do this is once you're set up, you can use your logging software will probably interface directly with Logbook of the World. Okay, so you can pick QSOs to update, click on the upload button, and up they go. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, how to set this up. There are 7 steps listed here. Each of these must be followed. They must all be done in order. They must be done correctly to get set up. So, let's look at the first. Download and install TQSL, and I've got a separate slide for each one of these. Use TQSL to request a Callsign certificate. You will receive a postcard in the mail. You use this postcard password to go into the website and enter the password, and then they will generate an email to you, a digital file called a certificate, which you need to put somewhere where it won't get accidentally deleted. And then you go back into your local TQSL and install the certificate. That's all, right? Okay, once you've done that, you're set up. So, the first thing you need to do is download TQSL. TQSL is a piece of software. You go to this website, lotw.arrl.org/lotw-help/installations/. Now, there's no great big button, so you've got to look for this little tiny word right there. Okay? Installing TQSL on Windows, download TQSL for Windows, and you click on that here. And then it will go through the usual process of downloading a file, and you'll go through your usual process of installing it, which I won't go through here. Then the next thing you do, once you have it installed, you run it, and you go here, Callsign certificate. Click on that, and it will bring up a request for a new Callsign certificate. You put in your call and your DXCC entity, which would be US of A, it could be Argentina, it could be Russia, it could be China, it could be Namibia. Wherever it is, you put that in there, because again, this is open to hams around the world for free. The beginning QSO date is put in there, fine for whatever. I believe they allow you the option of leaving the end date open. The only thing you have to do, of course, your Callsign and your DXCC entity. Down under here is a place to click Save or Send, and then behind the scenes, TQSL sends this to ARRL over the internet. Okay? Now, the next thing that you will do is you will receive a postcard from the ARRL if you're in the United States. There's some slightly different things if you're overseas, but eventually you get this postcard. Now, on the postcard is a password. Obviously, I've got mine blurred out here. Now, where does this password go? It does not go into TQSL. It goes onto the ARRL website, because on the reverse is the actual URL that you will go to, and you go to that URL and enter the postcard password. Okay? Then the next step happens. You will receive an email from the ARRL, and your certificate is attached to the email. It's a file. Okay, so you download that file just like you would download any attachment and put it in a place where you know where it is. That's important. And where you won't accidentally erase it. Okay, it's a weird looking file. All right. And then another thing that's in the email, and this is critically important, is a username and a password. Now, I've changed that to just cover that up with the word password. This is the password you use for two things. One, to log in to Logbook of the World, you use this password. Okay? Also, whenever you upload something that is certificated, you will have to enter that password again. The password is associated with the certificate. Obviously, do not lose that. Print the email, paste it into your paper log, whatever. Make sure that you do not lose that. Okay? Once you have done that and you've imported the certificate into eQSL, you're done. Now, the league says you can double-click on the file name for the certificate and it will install automatically. That didn't happen for me, but fortunately, there's a very easy method in TQSL to load that Callsign certificate. Once you have loaded it, there it is. Okay? And when you have done that, you are done. You've got Logbook of the World is working. You can use the feature to create a small log snippet and send it up. You can connect up your logging software with that, and so on. It all works at this point. Now, that was a number of steps, and I've tried to indicate where the pitfalls are. So in summary, logging has a long and glorious history. QSL cards are as old as amateur radio, been around for a century almost. Paper QSLs are still very much alive. Electronic QSLs are faster and cheaper. They can be done almost instantly. Some DX stations I've worked, by the time I get it uploaded, the confirmation is already there. The ARRL Logbook of the World is a secure way of exchanging electronic QSLs and can be used for ARRL operating awards. So, in summary, go forth, do good, and get on the air. This is Dave, KE0OG, saying 73.